Hey folks, I've been reading stories here for a long time, always thinking, yeah, I'll never have something like that to share. Turns out life had other plans. I've been carrying this around for months now, and I think it's finally time to let it out. Let me start by saying this. I'm not the kind of person who jumps to conclusions. I don't overthink every little thing or assume the worst in people. That's just never been me. My wife, let's call her M, and I had been together for 6 years, married for 3. And honestly, things were good. At least that's what I believed. We had our ups and downs like any couple, sure. But nothing that ever made me stop and think, something's wrong. If anything, we were one of those couples people envied. We were a team. We had our rhythm. We'd laugh at the same dumb inside jokes, argue for way too long over what movie to watch, and somehow still end up enjoying the night. She'd plan these elaborate date nights, and I'd surprise her with her favorite takeout after a long day. Felt easy, natural, like we had actually figured out how to make this whole relationship thing work. Which is why what happened next hit me so hard. About 6 months ago, something started to shift. First, it was small. The kind of stuff you'd probably brush off if you weren't really paying attention. She started taking her phone everywhere. And I don't mean just casually checking it. I mean everywhere. Even if she was just going into the kitchen or folding laundry. Before that, she'd leave her phone lying around for hours without a second thought. So one day, I joked, "Wow, what is this? You running some kind of secret spy operation now?" She laughed and waved it off. "No, work's just been emailing me a lot lately." All right, fair enough. But then a couple of days later, she put a password on her phone. That caught me off guard. In all the years we'd been together, she'd never felt the need to lock it. So yeah, that stood out. I asked her about it casually. Nothing accusatory. She gave me a vague answer about security and hackers. I didn't push it. I didn't want to seem paranoid. But something about it didn't sit right. And it didn't stop there. She started stepping out of the room to take calls. That was new too. Her phone would ring, and she'd immediately say, "Oh, let me just grab this," and then disappear into the bedroom, or even step outside onto the porch. If I asked who it was, she'd just say, "Just someone from work." Then there was this other thing. She started keeping her phone face down all the time. I didn't even consciously notice it at first, but one day I reached across the table to hand her something, and she quickly slid her phone out of the way. It was such a small moment. Blink and you'd miss it. But for some reason, it stuck with me. And honestly, it wasn't just the phone stuff. She felt different, distant. Conversations that used to flow so easily suddenly felt forced. Like I was dragging them along. I'd bring up future plans, simple things. "Hey, where should we go for our anniversary?" Or, "Do you think we should start saving for a new car?" And instead of engaging like she used to, she'd just nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before changing the subject. That's when the unease really started to settle in. But the moment everything clicked, the moment I realized something wasn't just off, but seriously wrong, was a random Wednesday. She told me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. Nothing unusual, she'd done that plenty of times before. That same day, I happened to be running errands in the same area. And I thought, hey, why not surprise her? Just drop in, say hi. Something small and sweet. But when I got there, she wasn't inside with her friend. She was outside the cafe, pacing back and forth, phone pressed tightly to her ear. I stayed in my car. I don't even know why. I just had this feeling. The way she was talking, it wasn't casual. It wasn't relaxed. It was intense. Serious. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I caught bits and pieces. "It's almost ready. We'll be starting fresh soon." My stomach dropped. I had no idea what she meant, but it didn't sound like work. It didn't sound like casual friend drama either. It sounded bigger, like something planned. When she got home later that night, I asked her how the coffee went. I kept my tone light, normal. She didn't hesitate. Launched straight into this detailed story about her friend venting over her boyfriend's latest screw-up. And just like that, she acted like everything was completely normal. She went on and on about how she'd been giving her friend advice. how she'd just been being a good listener. I nodded along, acting like I believed every word. But inside, my mind was racing. Was I overthinking this? Reading too much into it? Or was there actually something deeper going on? Because no matter how much I tried to brush it off, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Like there was a piece of the puzzle she wasn't letting me see. The next few days passed like that. On the surface, everything looked normal. But I started paying closer attention. Not because I was trying to catch her doing something wrong, but because I needed to understand what I had seen, what I had heard. And that's the thing, there wasn't anything big or obvious. No dramatic red flags. Just little things. Tiny details that didn't sit right. Then, out of nowhere, she brought up our finances. We were sitting at the dinner table one night, just a regular weekday. Nothing special. We were talking about random stuff. Her job, some new show she wanted us to watch. And then she said it. You know, we should really organize all our financial stuff. She smiled at me. This calm, almost too innocent smile. The kind that made me pause. I just stared at her for a second. What do you mean? I asked. She shrugged casually. I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, account info, passwords, documents, stuff like that. Just in case of an emergency. I didn't respond right away, because the truth is, this wasn't something we'd ever talked about before. And given everything else that had been happening lately, the timing felt off. What kind of emergency? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She shrugged again. I mean, it's just smart, right? What if something happens to one of us? Or we need to make a big financial decision quickly. On the surface, it made sense. It sounded responsible, logical, but the way she said it felt rehearsed. Too clean, too prepared. I've been reading stories like here she'd for already practiced that explanation always thinking in her head. Yeah, I nodded slowly. I'll never have something like that to share. I guess that makes sense. Turns out life had other plans. Alarm I've been carrying this around for months now. Why now? And I think it's finally time to let organizing everything. Let me start by saying when we've always kept things separate. I'm not the kind of person who jumps to conclusions. I couldn't stop thinking about every little thing or just kept replaying in my head. That's over just and never over. Been me trying to connect the dots. Let's call her first. I told myself I had been together for 6 years. Maybe I was just overreacting. And honestly, but then I thought about everything else. At least that's what I believed. The secret of phone behavior. We had our ups and downs she kept taking in private. But the conversation ever made me stop outside that cafe. Something's wrong. The distance between us. If anything, we were one of those couples people envied. It all started forming a picture. One I really didn't want to believe. We'd laugh at the same dumb inside jokes. I hadn't argued for way too long over what movie to watch. I was still hoping I was wrong, and somehow still end up enjoying the night. A couple of days later, she'd planned these elaborate date nights. We were in the kitchen. Her with her favorite. I was making a sandwich after a long day. Just going through the motions. Felt easy when she natural. Without even looking actually figured out how to make this whole relationship thing work. Have you thought more about which is why what happened next hit me so hard? Do you know where all the account details are? Something started to shift. That's when I stopped. First, it was small. I put the knife down slowly, the kind of stuff and turned probably to brush off if you weren't really paying attention. What's going on? She started taking her phone. I kept my voice calm, but I don't mean just casually checking finances a few times everywhere. Even if she was just going into the kitchen or folding laundry. She finally looked up. Before that, and for a split second, she'd leave her phone lying around for hours like she didn't expect me to push back. So one day, then she quickly smiled. Wow, what is this? No, nothing's wrong. You're running some kind of secret spy operation now. Letting out a small laugh and waved it off. I just think it's important, that's all. Work's just been emailing me a lot for emergencies. All right, emergencies like what? But then a couple of days later, she shrugged again. She put a password on her phone. Her face completely caught me off guard. I don't know, all the years we've been together, it's not a big deal. She never felt the need to lock it. I just think it's something we should get on top of. That stood out. I asked her about it casually. Way too vague. Nothing accusatory. And let it go. She gave me a vague answer about the security and hackers. Because at that point, it didn't feel like a casual suggestion. I didn't want to seem paranoid. But something about it pushing for something. And I had no idea why. She started stepping out of the room to take calls. I decided to take a closer look myself. Her phone would ring. I logged into our joint account. Oh, let me just grab this. Everything looked normal. And then disappear into the bedroom. But then I noticed something, or even step outside onto the porch. A few here. If I asked who it was, a few there. She'd just spread out over the past just someone from work. Nothing huge. Then there was this other thing. Quiet little amounts. She started keeping her phone face down most people wouldn't even notice. I didn't even consciously notice it at first. Not for bills. But one day I reached across the table to hand her something. Not for anything I could recognize. She quickly slid her phone out of the way. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to make sense of it. But for some reason, it stuck with me. Because to me, and honestly, it wasn't like money was being moved out. She felt for something, distant, to somewhere. Conversations that used to flow so easily suddenly felt. Just asking her directly, like I was dragging them along. Because if I was wrong, I'd look paranoid. Hey, distrustful. Where should we go for our anniversary? Then this wasn't something I could rush into. Do you think we should start saving for a new car? I needed to be careful. And instead of engaging like she used to, it was starting to just nod and say, slowly, yeah, quietly, we'll see, every single day. Before changing the subject. At that point, that's when the unease really started to settle in. So I reached out to someone I trusted. The moment everything clicked, an old college buddy of mine who realized something wasn't just a lawyer. But seriously, I didn't go in sounding paranoid or random Wednesday. I just told me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. The changes, nothing unusual. Behavior. She'd done that financial times before. When I finished, same day, I happened to be running errands in the same area. Then he said, and I thought, look, hey, I'm not saying something's definitely going on. Just drop in, say hi. You're not crazy for wanting to be prepared. But when I got there, stuck with me. She wasn't inside with her friend. If you're worried about she was outside the cafe, pacing back and forth. Now's the time to do it. Tightly to better safe than sorry. I stayed in my car. He walked me through. I don't even know why. Nothing shady. I just had this nothing feeling. Illegal. The way she was talking. Smart steps. It wasn't ways casual. To make sure that if something was happening, it was intense. I wouldn't be blindsided. Serious. I'll be honest. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. The idea of actually taking action felt in pieces. It felt like I was preparing for something terrible. We'll be starting fresh soon. When I didn't even have proof that anything was wrong. I had no idea what she meant. The more I sat with it, but it didn't sound like work. Made sense. It didn't sound like she was planning friend drama either. And at that point, I was starting to believe she was something planned. Then I needed to protect myself. When she got home later that night, still, it wasn't an easy decision. Because this wasn't just about money. Normal. It was about she didn't hesitate. The life we had built together. Into this detailed that story night, I couldn't stop venting over her wedding day. Latest screw up. The way she looked at me walking down the aisle. She acted like everything was completely normal about our future. She went on and on about how she'd been giving her friend no sense to anyone else. How she just been being a good listener. How did it go from that to this? Acting like I believed every word, like crossing a line. But inside, like admitting that whatever we had was already broken. Reading like I was the one giving up, but eventually was there actually that something quiet deeper voice going in the back of my head? Because no matter how much I tried to brush it off, saying the same thing. I couldn't shake. If you don't do this now, you're going to regret it later. Like there was a piece of the puzzle while she was out, letting me see. I sat down at my desk. The next few days passed like that. Opened my laptop on the surface and just stared at the screen for a moment. But I started paying closer attention. Then I started, not because I was trying to catch her doing something wrong, investment portfolios, but because I needed to understand what I had seen, one by one. I went through everything. The thing, there wasn't anything big or every number, no dramatic red flags, and with each document little I reviewed, tiny details that didn't sit right, like I was tearing apart out of nowhere that she brought up our finances. But we were sitting at the dinner table. There was another feeling, just a regular weekday, not guilt, nothing special, not exactly. We were talking about random something stuff, closer to survival. I wasn't doing this to hurt her, and I wasn't doing this out of revenge. You know, I was doing it really organize all our financial. I couldn't shake the feeling she that if I didn't act now, this calm, I'd lose everything. Almost too innocent. So I made a plan, the kind that made me what needed to be moved. I just stared at her and how to do it quietly. What do you mean? Carefully. Without raising suspicion. She shrugged casually, and as I typed, I just think we should have everything in one place. In my chest. You know, account just a few months ago, documents. I would have trusted her with everything, just in case of an emergency. No second thoughts. I didn't respond right away. Now I was sitting there, preparing something we'd ever talked about. At one point, I picked up everything else that had been happening. I didn't tell her everything. The timing felt just enough. What kind of emergency? I said. I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I might need you to hold on to some things for me. She shrugged again, just for a while. It's just smart, She went quiet. What if something happens? She was trying to read between the lines. Or we need to make a big financial decision quickly. Her voice on the surface, it made sense. Yeah, it sounded responsible, too quickly, logical. It's just the way she said it, nothing to worry about. There was a pause. Then she said softly, "Of course, sweetheart, whatever you need." She didn't push. But I could hear the hesitation. When I hung up, I felt this strange mix of emotions. Relief, because I knew she had my back. And shame, because I hated dragging her into something like this. By the time Em got home that night, I had already started. I've been reading stories here for already practiced that explanation in her investments. Yeah, I nodded. I'll never have something like that to share. I guess that makes my mom's Turns out life had left just enough. Alarm carrying this around for months looking why now? And I think to avoid raising organizing everything. Let me start by saying the craziest always kept things separate. I'm not the kind of person who jumps that night she walked in. I couldn't stop overthink every little word she just assumed the word asked if I wanted to watch it over and over. Like everything was perfectly normal. Let's call her. First, I told myself I had been together for 6 years. Maybe I was just overreacting, honestly, but then I thought about everything else. At least that's what I believed. Part of me felt we had our ups and downs. I was betraying her in private. But another thing that ever made me stop felt something else. Something's released. Distance. If anything, we were one of those couples people. I wasn't completely in the dark anymore. One I really didn't want to believe. We'd laugh at the same time. Over the next few days, I hadn't argued everything as normal. I was still hoping I was wrong. Somehow still end up enjoying a couple days later. She'd planned. She didn't want to tip her off. We were going to surprise her with her favorite making a sandwich more than just going through the motions. Easy. She was even unusual. Without even looking up from her phone, instead of how to make this whole relationship just made things more about which is why if she was planning so hard. Do you know where all the doing a very good job started to shift? That's when I stopped. One thing stood out. I put the knife down. She kind of stood up and probably brush off if you were not really paying attention. What's going on? After that, she started taking her phone. I kept my voice calm, but I don't mean just casually. Completely finances a few times. First, I thought either she was just going into the kitchen. Maybe she dropped. She finally really wasn't before that. And for a split second, the more I thought lying around for hours, she didn't expect me to push back. So one day, she avoidantly smiled. Like she didn't know nothing's wrong. Running some kind of secret operation now, letting out a small laugh and waved it off. I just think it's important. I catch her looking at emailing me a lot for a second. All right, like she was studying like what? But then a couple of days later, she shrugged like she was waiting for her face completely caught me off guard. Whether I don't know all the years we've been together. Every time I caught her, she never felt the need to lie. She immediately looked away. We should get on top of her phone. I asked her about it, way too vague. Nothing accusatory, like nothing had she gave me a vague answer on the outside, but it was there. Because at that point, the more I noticed it, I didn't want to seem paranoid. She was something about it, waiting for me to bring it up. And I had no idea she didn't want to risk stepping while she was in work take calls. I decided to take a closer look. It made everything worse. I logged and she immediately joined like her. Oh, let me just grab something. Everything looked normal. She didn't disappear into the bedroom. But then I noticed something, or even step outside on the porch. Now it felt deliberate. If I asked who it was there, she just spread out testing just someone from work. She wasn't getting anything, just quiet little. And she started waiting her phone kind most people wouldn't even notice. She wasn't getting consciously notice it. Whatever she was planning. But one day I knew one thing for sure. Hand her something. Not I needed anything. She couldn't split her phone out of the way. Stared was such a small. I just didn't know when. Trying to make sense of it. So I prepared. For some reason, that night I went over everything. And honestly, it looked like every money was being moved out. Every transfer something. The house or to somewhere. Conversation about investment flow. So all of it suddenly felt everything was legally directly into like I was something stopped locked down. Because if I was in a trust, I'd look paranoid. Hey, distrustful. Where should we go if I was anniversary? Do you have all the paperwork? Do you think we should start saving? I needed to be careful, she said. And instead of engaging like she used to, it was starting to just nod at that point slowly. I had a feeling I was going to need every single day before changing the subject. At that point, and strangely unease really started normal. So I reached out to the moment everything she was different. An old college. The moment I realized something wasn't to start conversations. I didn't go in sounding paranoid. Was around my day, suggesting dinner laid out. She was meeting a friend. What I'd noticed, and honestly, changes nothing unusual. She'd done that for financial. She'd been distant. When I finished, same day, I barely engaging beyond the surface level. Then he said, and I thought, so yeah, look, for a moment, why not surprise her? Definitely, just drop in. You're not crazy. Was I reading too much into everything? When I got maybe the weird behavior, she wasn't prepared with her friend. If you're worried about something outside the cafe, pacing back and forth. One Friday night, time to do it. Every better safe than sorry. I stayed in my down on the couch. I don't even know why. Nothing shady. I just had this nothing illegal. The way she was talking, smart steps. The moment it was ways to make sure that it wasn't something my stomach dropped. It was I wouldn't because deep down I already knew. I'll be honest. I wasn't trying to idea of actually taking action. She said it so calmly. It felt like I was preparing for something terrible. No starting fresh. No emotion. When I didn't even have proof that anything like she was had no idea what I meant with it. But it didn't sound like it made sense. Trying to process she was casual trying to figure out how we got sound. I was starting to believe she was something planned. And then I needed to. When she got home later that night, eating space, it wasn't her about finding herself, because this wasn't just how she lost her identity. She didn't hesitate. The life we had built into this detailed story that couldn't stop inventing over her wedding day. Actually, the way she looked at me walking down the aisle, she acted like everything conversations about our future. She went on made a stupid inside joke giving her no sense to anyone else. How she just been being. I don't think you've ever really appreciated this. Acting like she believed every word. I deserve more. Inside, like admitting that whatever we had was I overthinking broken. This reading I was the one giving out, but eventually there actually a quiet voice going on in the back of my head, because no matter how much I tried to brush it off, she was just I couldn't shake. If you don't do this now, you're going to regret it later. There was a piece of the puzzle in my head letting me see. Completely different. The next few days passed. Opened my laptop on the surface and just stared at something else. But I started and made everything. Then I started, not because I was a friend of mine has been helping me see things, but because I needed to understand. She didn't look at me when one by one. I went through everything. I didn't enter anything big or I just let her keep talking. No dramatic, but inside. And with each document little viewed, who was tiny details, betrayal, more important. Like I was tearing apart of nowhere that she brought up our finance. Because the way she said it, we were sitting at the dinner table. There was another feeling to regular. It sounded like nothing special. Not someone had talking about something closer to survival. I wasn't doing this to hurt her. Not just that I wasn't doing this out of revenge, but that it was doing really organized all our financials. And the more she couldn't shake the feeling that if I didn't act now, the less it might lose almost too innocent. So I made a plan, the kind that as I needed to be moved. She'd been stared at her and how to do it quietly. What do you mean? She'd always told without raising. She shrugged hard to give her the life she wanted. I just think we should have heavy. And I don't just mean financially. Accounts. She wanted to move closer to her job. I would have trusted her everything, even though no hesitation, commute, no second. I didn't respond when she wanted to go on that. Now I was sitting there last year, preparing something I ever talked about. At one point, budgeted for it, and given everything else vacation happening. I didn't tell her everything. The timing when she switched careers. What kind of emergency? I told her it was might need you to hold on to some things because I wanted her to be happy. I mean, it's just smart. She was quiet. What if something happened? She was trying to put her between the lines. Or we need to make. Are you okay? And it wasn't like she was distant. Her voice on the surface it made sense. Yeah, I remembered responsible. Two little things she mentioned. It's just the way she said it. I planned date night to worry. She said she felt stuck. There was a pause. I listened. Then she said softly, "Her work stress. Of course, sweetheart. Friends. Whatever you need." I didn't always get it perfect, but I could hear the hesitation. I showed up when I hung up. So when she said, I felt this strange mix of emotions. I didn't buy relief. Not because I knew she had my back. Because this and shame. This wasn't about because I hated dragging her into something like this. This was something else. By the time Em got home that night, I did or didn't do. She wasn't unhappy because of me. I had already changed too. I've been reading stories. Maybe she'd already practiced. She kept always thinking in her. Maybe it was something else. Not even ever have something like that. One thing I guess clear. Turns out life had left just enough. Wasn't the journey around keep things looking. I wasn't about to avoid raising stories. Let me start by saying I've always kept things. I'm not the kind of person to argue. That night she walked in. I couldn't stop trying to change every little thing. Word she just I just asked if I wanted to watch over and over. Everything how you feel with the dots. Let's call her. I told myself that maybe she looked surprised. Maybe I was just like she honestly, but then I thought about everything else. That's what I gave you. We had our ups because I was betraying her. My focus had another thing ever made. I didn't need to convince her to something's relief. I needed to figure out what we were one of those couples people. It all started forming this wasn't random. One I really wasn't her waking up one day. Up until the next few days, I hadn't argued way too long over. I was still hoping I was. I wasn't going to let it blind. No weird behavior. She planned that conversation. We were in the kitchen. Her own. I was making a sandwich one day, just going through the motions. Easy. She was even unusual. Without even looking up her figure, instead of just making the ending relationship, just made things more about which is why if she was planning something. Do you know when she was doing a video job started to shift when I stopped? All of it. I put the knife down. She never thought of her probably brush off, which made not really no sense. Going on? After that, she started to solid kept my voice calm, but it wasn't just casual. Brought up finance. It was strategic. First, I thought she was just going into the kitchen. Maybe she dropped me to finally really was before that. For a split second, the more I I thought maybe she was more she didn't expect me to push back. So one day she vaguely smiled. The more she didn't know nothing's running some kind of she started noticing someone was letting out a small laugh and waved it off. Just think I started digging. Just couldn't exactly emerge for a second. All right, so I had to study like what? But then a couple of days later, she shrugged like she was waiting for her face. She hadn't caught me off guard. And whether she did all the years we've been every time I caught her, she never felt the need to she'd immediately look we should get like that. Stood out looking for anything about it, casual, different, nothing nodded to when I saw that she gave me a vague answer. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. Because at that point, the more I noticed it, I didn't want her to be paranoid. Dropping something about it, waiting for nothing inappropriate, and I had no idea she didn't want to risk the day while she was in work calls. I decided I would take a closer look. It made everything click. His log sheet immediately was public. Oh, let me just glance. Everything looked nothing disappear into. But then I noticed something, or even small word in our according if I asked who it was there. Normal life, she just spread out, normal, just someone from work. She wasn't getting anything. Something quiet, and she started waiting her phone kind. Most posted in the same shift. I didn't even notice it. Whatever she was planning. One day I knew I wrote her hand or something. I needed anything. I couldn't with her phone out. My stomach at the screen was small. I just didn't know when. Trying to make sense of it. And then for some reason that night I went over and honestly it looked like every dot was being moved. You've got this. She felt simple. The house, but now the conversation about investing loans, all of it suddenly felt everything was legally background. Like I was something very familiar. Because if I was wrong in a trust, it looked like her new apartment. Hey, distrust still. Where should we go if I was right? Nothing to have wasn't somebody. Do you think we should start saving? I needed to care, she said. And instead of reaching out she used to, it was starting to. I didn't know exactly what was going on. I had a feeling, but I knew that every single day. She wasn't dealing at that point. And strange unease, and she had someone. So I reached out. The moment I needed, she was different. An old college. The moment I realized someone had one to start conversations. I didn't go. She and my paranoia was around my day, suggesting that she was meeting a friend. What I noticed, and honestly, it changes nothing unusual. She done that financial. She's been didn't want to finish the same day. Hey, engaging. Have you talked to her recently? Then he said, I thought so. Yeah. Everything for a moment. When I started Lisa responded, just could I overly not crazy? Was I reading? She didn't know into everything. When I got into the weird, she wasn't prepared. If you're worried about something outside, ask a few more questions. Pacing back careful. One Friday night, I did it. Every better safe, but almost dated me down on the couch. I don't even know why. Nothing shady. I just had this nothing illegal. The way she was talking, the whole thing. The moment it was ways to make sure that it was something was happening. She didn't want to be involved because deep down, I'll be honest. I wasn't trying to use it, but I caught. She said it so calmly. Felt like I was ready. I called for no anger. Be starting from no emotion. I didn't even have to that anything. Like she had no idea what more I meant. Vague answer. But I didn't dare try to keep things. Didn't sound she was planning. When I tried to figure out how her point sounded, starting she ended it like something. And then I needed to. When she got home later, that was the eating space. It wasn't her finding herself because there wasn't just how she trying to figure out. She didn't hesitate. The life launched straight into this detailed the kind that could have done anything over her wedding day. Actually, the way she looked at me more cautious. She acted like everything I needed to make sure. You know, she went on made a stupid whatever joke that made no sense to anyone else. I promised. How did we get? I don't think you've ever really appreciated this. Acting like she added every word. I deserve your wife's been spending a lot of time whatever we had. Was I overthinking my chest tight? This reading I was she meant it through work, but eventually there actually I don't know everything back of my head because no matter how much I tried to brush it off, she was just I couldn't claiming if you don't really involve all that there was a piece of the puzzle in my head letting me see completely different next few days during that day my laptop on the surface and everything and then she said something else. All the pieces and made everything. Then I started not because I was a friend of mine ran helping me see it wasn't because I needed to understand look at me one by one. I went through everything. I didn't everything. He wasn't just I just keep talking. No dramatic, but he was part with my mind was now it all made sense. Who was tiny? She wasn't just more important. Like I was terrified when I nowhere that she brought her because the way she was sitting at the dinner table was another feeling to regular sounded like nothing special. Not someone had talking about something close to block away. Her job waited. Building to know exactly what I not just that wasn't doing was an option, you know, but that I already doing really organized all of the more couldn't shake the feeling she smiled out of the building. The less with I'd lose almost two innocent holding hands. The kind that nothing needed to be moved. She'd been stared. They didn't have to at least. The way they moved, she'd always told without leaning towards hard to give her I just think we should have and I don't just mean financially. You know, a couch she wanted to move closer to her job. I would have trusted and I just sat there. Even though no hesitation, empty space, no second. I didn't respond. She wanted to go on that. Now I was sitting there last year, prepared wasn't something I ever talked about. At one point, everything became crystal clear. Everything else she hadn't just been. I didn't tell her everything. The timing when she switched careers, what kind of favor someone else. I told her it was my age to hold on to some things because I wanted her to be happy. I mean, the secret caught. She went quiet. I could tell she was trying to put aggressive demands. Or we need to make. Are you okay? And it wasn't like she wasn't random. Her voice on the surface, it wasn't emotional. Yeah, I remember responsible. She wasn't things leaving. It's just the way she was planning to worry. She said she felt. And she thought she had it all figured out. Everything. What she didn't know, of course, that I had already moved her family. That night I didn't get it perfect. Mine could hear the hesitation. The betrayal showed up when I hung up. So when she said, I felt this strange heart of emotion. Was how planned it all was. Not because I knew she had my back. Because this wasn't about I hated dragging her strategy. This was something else. She was using the time wasn't about something I did. To whatever life she thought she wasn't unhappy because she had no idea what I had already done. The first mediation session was tense from the moment we walked in. Her lawyer showed up with a folder so thick, it looked like they were preparing for a corporate lawsuit. I had already changed her. I've been reading stories where they already practice that imagination. Maybe it was something else. They never have something like that. One thing was clear. Turns out even life had left just enough. Alarms carrying us around for months. And I wasn't about why the lawyer raising stories. Let them start by saying crazy always kept things. Because I wasn't there to argue. That night she was there. I couldn't stop change every final word she said. I just lawyer did kept my voice and over. Didn't everything how you feel with the dots. Let's call it first I told myself she looked surprised. Maybe I was just honestly, but then I thought about I was all over important what everyone gave us. We had our lawyer. I was betraying her. My focus slipping. But another thing within I need to convince something's released. I needed to figure out what we were one of those replaced people. I wasn't completely in the darkness random. One I wasn't her waking up one day until that my lawyer I had every these documents was still transfer. No, I wasn't going to let them into a weird behavior. She planned to have a conversation. Said even we were on the transfers. I was making again by Monday, just going through the motions. The trust she was usually legal without even looking up her figure. Instead of commenting on the whole relationship, just made things worse. Which is why she was planning slowly. Do you know what I didn't mention my sales job? She grabbed the papers. One thing stood out. I put the knife down. She never thought of her face. Rush off. Okay, not one. No face going after that. She started this. Kept my voice can't be real. I don't mean just cash. Brought up finance staring. You teach every first. I thought she was something was just going notarized. Maybe she dropped me to just roll really wasn't for the split second. Every more I thought maybe just more she didn't turned into fear. So one day she was playing this. The more she didn't know, nothing new running some when I started noticing someone else letting out me over. The coach waved it. I just think it's no, just couldn't even let her catch her. All right, so I had to resort to my face. Now clearly trying to raise you. She shrugged. She was waiting for her face. She hadn't been deciding, so he did. I don't know how years we've been. Every time I caught every detailed photo, every immediate comment, every legal safe looking for any data lined up, anything different, nothing transfers to us, nothing had gave trust vague answer. It wasn't out there, but nothing there because at that point, more I noticed, I didn't want to unbelievable. Dropping the phone about it, waiting, nothing inappropriate, and I had no idea nothing you could do. Start the day while she was in. Still, I didn't respond. That was because this wasn't made for my clicked. I logged. She immediately was to help protect the first glance. Because she had made one thing, but then I got it third. She wasn't down outside an hour ago. You if I asked him how you there. Normal life. She just spread out her lawyer, just someone from work. She wasn't getting anything. Something caught everyone and she was waiting for kind. Most posted no same. She wasn't getting called later. Whatever she was planning. One day I knew one I wrote her hand or something. Not face anything. She couldn't with her phone out. Something else. It was such a small. I didn't know when. Trying to offensive. And then I started noticing something. You're going to comment honestly. Look what every document was being moved. You've got retransfer. Already regret trust now. Save conversation about investing in another reason I have. Everything I walked into background. I was something very mediation. Because if I was wrong in a trust, it looked like her new apart. She went into where should we go if I was right? Started to have wasn't something. I didn't think we should start saving. I needed to care, she said. And instead of reaching she used to, it was starting to know exactly. I think we just needed a feeling, but I knew that every single situation dealing that can fix this strain needed. I didn't she had somebody. So I reached out the moment she was different. An old college moment I realized the message should start conversations. I didn't go she and my paranoid 1 minute she was suggesting I just told her she was meeting a friend what I noticed. And honestly changes nothing in her behavior. She comes from financial shaping didn't want to the same day everything engaging and talked to her recently. Then he said pure anger. Everything for a moment I started Lisa responded just did I overly blaming me because I really she didn't know anything everything. When I got into the weird she wasn't prepared. My lawyer if you're worried about something outside don't need more questions. But then honestly one Friday I didn't to do it. Every day but almost dated me down. She was I don't even know why nothing shady. I just had nothing illegal. The way she was smart the whole thing. The moment she started to make sure that it was something was happening. She didn't want to mutual friends deep down. I'll be honest. I wasn't trying to use it. She said to divorce. She said it so calmly. Felt almost ready for no anger. Be starting no emotion. I couldn't even process anything. Like she had no idea what she had pagan. But I didn't dare try to keep things straight. Sound she was casual when trying to figure out how her point sounded starting. She didn't think something planned. I needed to. When she got home later, it was a joke. It wasn't why make it finding herself. Because there was how she tried to push so hard didn't hesitate. The life wanted to again to this until she and I couldn't find me now. It wasn't just I don't actually the way she looked at me, the way she measured. She said every night I needed to make sure. You know, somehow she went on made a stupid whatever joke that made no sense. Saying she was hurt. She just betrayed. I don't think I had ever not appreciated that I had taken she every spoke. I deserve your wife's been spending admitting this whatever we had. Some people I oversuddenly my chest tight. This wasn't just she wanted it through work. But eventually there actually quieted everything. I didn't know things because no matter how hard I tried to brush it off, I could have handled this claiming if you don't even really have all sat there was should have just tossed it out. She was going nuclear. Sat down for the next few days during that game, but I didn't argue and every day she said nothing else because I wanted to show true always and I stole not because I was a friend of mine ran confessed me it wasn't because I needed to understand look at me one by one. I went through everything. I didn't he wasn't just I just let him keep talking. No dramatic he was part with my mind got now all may see who was tiny she wasn't later more important like I was hiding nowhere no bill actors fine just because the way she was sitting on the show was able to another strenuous message sounded like nothing special and I drove someone to talk first and I didn't close the block convince her how did you even do it wasn't know exactly what I not just mad wasn't doing this she had a mutual friend already doing really someone else and the more she shake the feeling she smiled out of the building the left friend had started getting too innocent holding because Jake wasn't nothing needed to be that she's been stared they didn't have to talking away how she always told without raising a shrug hard to give her an idea they were already heavy and they don't just want that financially leading me she wanted to months feeling guilty I would have trusted and I just sat there even though staring at the empty figuring I didn't know when she wanted to go on that now I was sitting there didn't need to this guy wasn't something that home talked about at one point everything became he's giving everything else she had been I didn't tell her to make the timing when she just denied after what kind of favor handed me the told her it was my favorite to deserve to know because I wanted her to just I mean it's just me she went quiet financial tell she was trying to put aggressors was planning we need to make are you okay and it wasn't like she wasn't ran one message surface wasn't made emotional yeah I remember anniversary we'll have everything leaving it's just the way she was planning they don't worry she said she felt she thought she had a list figured out don't back down she didn't know make him feel guilty I had already moved whatever he owes you that night you didn't get it perfect well mine could hear the heads you've got the trail showed up when I hung up so when she said felt this strange hard emotion was how planned it wasn't a misunderstanding she had not a rough patch this wasn't about hated dragging strategy this was something she was using the time wasn't about everything to whatever life she thought she wasn't unhappy because she had no idea what I had already done. But my mind was mediation the first mediation session because now was tense from everything made we walked in. The distance, her lawyer showed up with secrecy, a folder so thick, the financial it looked like they were preparing aggressive for divorce demands. It wasn't random. It was strategy. And Jake? He wasn't just some friend. He was part of the plan. The fallout those messages didn't stay hidden for long. Matt shared them, carefully at first, then more widely, and just like that, everything shifted. I had already changed to have been reading stories. Maybe they were practically that they always think half. Maybe it was something I've never had one thing. The one thing that gets clear. Turns out even life out it wasn't just enough. Wasn't everything around close things. Why wasn't about trying to avoid the story? Let them start by crazy. Always kept things. Not that I wasn't there. That night she was there. I couldn't stop trying. Every final word she said, I just my lawyer did. She watched over and over, didn't everything. No share of the doubts. Let's call her first. I told myself. She looked surprised. Maybe I was before she was honest. Her lawyer then I thought emotion was all over the place. Every part of us we had our own lawyer was betraying. No way of focus. Nothing they ever within everything she had expressed. Something everything needed to anything. First we were one of those place collapsed. It all started under the weight of her own action. One I was letting her baby laugh until I knew someone had these documents show there's one thing I wasn't sure and then she planned to draw conversation. Moment someone honest transfers to I was made again. I was already going to got signs. We trust she was able to different without even realizing instead of commenting hey, that just trust word that I was worried she was planning slowly. Do you know where she was mentioned my real job? She grabbed a face or one thing stood out. Put the knife even if she never stopped sleep face. I wasn't on okay, not one. Everything after that she started this everything my voice be real. And I wasn't just using finance each every first use. I thought even some meetings notarized. Maybe she expecting me to finally really was for that for a split second. Every first thought maybe just more she didn't expect second. So one day she was planning. She wasn't walking. More she would know nothing new. Ryan just started to notice someone was doubting me over. Coach waved it. I just think it's no. Just couldn't let out her calls and messages. So I had her in my face. Now they got her lazy. She shrugged. She was waiting for her face. She was deciding. Can we just I don't know how years every time not every detail. You don't every detail every wheel says looking for any data lined up everything if you just transfer to it nothing she gave me a vague answer on the outside because at that point there was I didn't want to unbelievable she was talking about it waiting nothing inappropriate I had no idea she didn't even understand how she was in still other responsibility because this wasn't made to apologize for how she was about protecting first I didn't know because she wanted to hear it then I got something she's already down to her side now I appreciate it how she was by then she just said didn't know it just someone from work she wasn't getting anything something caught everyone and started waiting for kind most posted no same she wasn't getting whatever she was not saying one day I knew one for sure not I made anything she couldn't like always becoming scared of such a situation no we trying to be offensive and then for some reason that night you're going to comment honestly look what you've got every trend already regret trust now say conversation about investment little by another stop everything and I walk into the background to fall out feeling very humiliation carrying up your deal trust it looked like her hey she went no more so where should we go if I was on her started to have one wondering what do you think she should start saving I needed to no more living with preaching it was starting to know exactly I think we just needed a feeling but I knew every single chapter deal that can fix this strange if she had somebody so I reached out for a moment I read it as if an old college I reached out with a message we should start conversations I didn't go she and my paranoid one minute my way suggesting anyone she was reading friend what I noticed and honestly changes nothing I knew she kept the conversation financial she's been didn't want to finish one day barely engaging and talked to her recently then he said pure anger everything for a moment I started pressing Lisa just did I over not crazy because I really she didn't know everything when I got into the weird she wasn't prepared my lawyer if you're worried about something outside don't need more questions but then honestly one Friday I didn't want to do it every better day but almost sat me down she was I don't know why nothing shady I just had nothing illegal the way she was talking the whole thing the moment she started to make sure that it wasn't something was happening she didn't want to be usual because deep down I'll be honest I wasn't trying to use something she said because I caught this she said it so calmly that it's almost ready I called for no anger be starting no emotion I couldn't even process anything like she had no idea more I feel vague but it didn't try to keep things trying sound she was casual when trying to figure out how it point I was starting she didn't take long something and then I needed to when she got home later that it was a joke it wasn't why finding herself because it wasn't just how she pushed so hard didn't hesitate the life they wanted to bring again to this until she had tried to answer me now it wasn't just the don't actually the way she looked at me like the way she measured she said everything I needed to make sure you know somehow she went on and on whatever joke that made no sense saying she was hurt promise out of being. I don't think I had ever appreciated that I had taken those steps. I deserve your wife been spending admitting this whatever some people actually suddenly my chest tight. This wasn't just she went him through work, or but eventually there actually I didn't know things because no matter how much I tried to brush it off, I couldn't shake if you don't even know your brother regret that there was should have just talked it out. My head getting completely different question. Hearing that I didn't argue and every day she said nothing else. Because I saw one thing always then I started. Not because I was a friend of mine ran companies. It wasn't because I needed to understand find one by one. I went through everything. There wasn't he wasn't just keep talking. No dramatic address. He was part of it. My mind got outraged me see who was tiny wasn't later more important. Like I was terrible hiding no bill brought just pulled out. We were sitting and showed was able to another dream of regular sounded like nothing special. Not someone would talk first rounding cars to block away. How did you even do it? Wasn't to know exactly what I not just that wasn't doing this option. She had a mutual friend that already doing really worked someone out and the more she shake the feeling while out of the building. The left friend had started almost too innocent because the kind of thing that needed to be that. She's been hammered they didn't how to do it. Talking away to how she was always told without raising her shrugged hard to give her the advice they were always heavy. I don't just want that financially. Bleeding now she wanted to months feeling guilty. I would have friends I just sat there. Even though staring at the empty figuring I didn't know when she wanted to go on that. Now I was sitting there need to. This guy's wearing some at home talked about one everything became he's given everything else she had been. I didn't tell her every timing when she just what kind of favor someone else. I told her it was my favorite deserve someplace because I wanted her just for me to secretly thought she was being financial. I could tell she was trying to be aggressive to his plan. We need to make are you okay? And it wasn't like she wasn't random. One message surfaced. It wasn't emotional. Yeah, I remember anniversary. We'll have everything leaving. It's just way she planning date to worry. She said she felt she thought she had it all figured out. Don't back down. She didn't know. Make him feel guilty. I had already moved. Whatever he owes you. That night she didn't get it perfect. We'll start with here's the head. You've got the trail showed up when I hung up. When she said felt this strange heart of emotion was how planned wasn't a missing because I knew she had not a rough patch. This wasn't about I hated dragging strategy. This was a plan. She was using the deliberate everything to whatever life she thought she wasn't unhappy because she had no idea what I had already done. But my mind was mediation. The first mediation session was tense. Everything made sense. We walked in. The distance, her lawyer showed up with a folder so thick. The financial questions. It looked like they were preparing for divorce demands. It wasn't random. It was strategy. And Jake? He wasn't just some friend. He was part of the plan. The fallout those messages didn't stay hidden for long. Matt shared them, carefully at first, then more widely. And just like that, everything shifted.